It's my great pleasure to hold this section. We are honored to invite Dr. Lisa Sigafoos for this keynote speech. Dr. Lisa Sigafoos is an assistant professor of Department of Special Education at the University of Texas at Austin. She has extensive teaching experience, teaching students with disability in post-secondary education. Within her course, she educates students on disability empowerment, disability language and treatment, as well as inclusive teaching practice. Today, she will share her experience with us. The topic of her presentation today is empowering disability identify and fostering inclusivity in post-secondary classroom. Let's welcome Dr. Lisa Sigafoos with a big applause. Lisa, are you online now? Lisa. Lisa 说要跟大家打招呼。Lisa,
I am. Can y'all hear me?
Lisa, can you hear me?
Yes.
Lisa, maybe you are on your mic. You have to turn on your mic.
I'm hearing me.
Okay, Lisa, it's your turn now.
Oh. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm so glad to be here. I wish I could be with y'all live, but I am here in Austin, Texas. So as you can see, it's very late at night, so I'm trying not to fall asleep at my kitchen table. I go to bed much earlier than this. I have 3 kids that wake me up pretty early, but I'm very excited and we get to talk with y'all about my work in working at the post-secondary level and working with students with disabilities and really working to create post-secondary classrooms that are inclusive to all types of students.
Open your PPT record. 那个, hello. Okay.
Hi, everybody. Well, it's me, and it is time that I give my presentation. I wish I was there with y'all in person, but instead I get to talk into a computer screen for the next 45 minutes or so. So I hope you find value to what I have to say. So this is my presentation on empowering disability identity and fostering inclusivity in the post-secondary classrooms. So this is my presentation outline. I have kind of 4 main topics that I'm going to talk about that really come together, especially the first 3, and really are the foundation of building and fostering inclusivity in those post-secondary classrooms, which is something that is so needed, that we really take time to transform what is the traditional style post-secondary classroom into a space that really allows all students to find their potential and really have the capability to learn and succeed. And so that's what I hope to go over with y'all today. So these are the topics. I'm going to be talking about establishing a safe classroom environment. I'm going to talk with y'all about identity empowerment and a really interesting activity that I do with students to really foster inclusivity. Talk about some instructional style and things that you can do to really help bring your classroom up to speed and make it one where all students can learn and grow in a great space. And then, of course, we're going to talk about the inclusive post-secondary classroom and what that means and what that is. So I hope you enjoy. I hope I don't bore you as I talk to I'm talking to my computer screen, and that you find enjoyment to this. Okay, so let's get started with my first point, and that is establishing a safe classroom environment. And this is so important to really allow students to feel valued and have a space where they feel comfortable learning, that they can be heard. For students with disabilities, right, they're coming out of, their K through 12 schooling, that's different in all the different countries, that looks different. How special education is run in different countries, it's much different. How much inclusion students are really in those more public school is very different. And so but regardless, they're coming out of a system and now they're coming into a university. That can be a scary, intimidating place. It's new. Oftentimes for a lot of students with disabilities, this is the first time that they're having to become advocates for themselves, that they're really given a voice, that they have to start expressing their needs. And that can be a really intimidating, scary place, especially in those traditional post-secondary classrooms that are very one-track mindset, right? We watch movies and there's this perception that post-secondary classrooms are these very strict, rigid rooms that only the best and the brightest are going to walk into and succeed. But that's not the space that we should really be creating for our students. If we want to help these students really grow and mature and learn things that they've never thought about before, then we need to create safe classroom environments, one where they can really be a student that can take as much out of the classroom as possible. And so these are my points that really help with that. I'm not a researcher. I am so glad that I get to have my job at UT and do what I do and really help our undergraduates become incredible special education teachers and even gen ed teachers and other students around campus. And one of my courses that I teach that's for all university students, really grow and be better individuals. But I love taking research and really implementing it and putting it into practice and really valuing what works in the classroom. So the first one is we really need to take time to build up our students' self-confidence. We need to let them know that they have potential, that they are smart, they are capable, that them being in that classroom is where they're meant to be. Because oftentimes they walk into classrooms and that is not the message that's being sent to them. That's not how the instructor is really setting up the classroom. It almost crushes confidence in a way. We can all think back to those post-secondary classrooms where we thought we were like, oh, this is going to be a great subject. I'm going to do so well. And then you walk in and you're like, oh my gosh, am I supposed to be here? Like, how did I get here with all these other students? But we create spaces that students feel confident, that they recognize that they are a good learner and that they have the potential to succeed and learn this information and use this information. And so what I'm going to talk about throughout the rest of the presentation is really how we build up self-confidence in our students and allow them to really become the learners that they are. Another big aspect of creating a safe classroom environment is acceptance. One of those big pieces is acceptance of themselves. So the next topic I'm going to talk about is identity and identity empowerment, how important that is to really establish a safe classroom where students will share, where students will have a voice and be heard and really be free to learn. And acceptance of oneself, I have found, is one of the key aspects to acceptance of others, right? And I want to create a space where students know that they're accepted and that they are looking around their classmates who can be very different from them, especially in a classroom of students from across campus, from a variety of majors and backgrounds. And they accept every student in the classroom for who they are. The next piece is fairness. This is, a word that I feel like people can interpret in different ways, but truly fairness is understanding that we don't all need the same thing. We're not all going to get the same thing, but that students need what they need to be successful. And so it really helps students understand that our learning is going to look different in here. What students get and what students need is different. But all of us getting what we need to be successful, that is the point of, being here in this space and learning. And so I don't want my students to all be the same student, right? And meet my needs as an instructor. My job is to meet their needs, is to be their facilitator, their supporter of their learning. And so I really do teach them that fairness is not everyone getting the same thing, but everyone getting what they need to be successful. So whether it's accommodations or differences in assignments or other pieces to the puzzle, like, I am here to help them be a successful learner. And that looks differently for all students. And lastly, I want to create a classroom that's really encouraging to students, encouraging for them to be who they are and build up their strengths, and for them to be open and honest. And I love when at the end of the first day, I start having students open up and sharing things that's very clear they would never share, right, in other classroom spaces. But they know that in this space, it is safe and they can be who they are and they can talk about their backgrounds and they will not feel shame. There is no stigma around having disabilities, that we are all individuals, we are all unique, right? And that we are all here to learn together. And so I really encourage this environment where students are so supportive and encouraging of each other. And I love in class when we start having conversations and students will just start giving out affirmation to other students, right? Which is so incredible as an instructor, to sit back and really listen to my students and hear what they're saying and the conversations they're having on day one of class, because I've purposely taken the time to establish this environment for students. And it goes even further than just that first day of class, but also the syllabus. I take a lot of time to create a syllabus that is really one that reflects who I am, reflects my energy, my personality, and what I want from this class. Traditionally, a syllabus is this very black and white sheet of paper that just provides information, but it also sets the tone of the class. And it's the first introduction that a student will often have to the instructor. This is the first thing they see, they're reading when they're starting to think about, what is this class going to be like? How am I going to fit in this class? What type of learner do I need to be? And so I really take the time to create a syllabi that is, bright and colorful, but very informational, and presents things in a way that really helps ease students' anxiety. It really helps them feel comfortable and excited about the class, excited to meet me, right? And so I always send that out in advance to class starting. So students with a really nice email welcoming students to class, letting them know how excited I am, and really starting that conversation, that communication, which we'll talk more about later. And really, students walk in and you can see the difference in how they feel comfortable already. They're excited to be there. I've definitely seen the difference in old syllabi that I had that were just that black and white to the one I use now, which is much more creative and really helps students feel valued and excited, especially students with disabilities, making it a point to know that I see them, I hear them, I am here for them. They deserve to be there as much as any other student. And even on the first day of class, I always make it a point to go over those things. If you are a student with a disability, if you are a student, who has religious, events during the semester, if you're a student whose native language is not English, right? That these are things that I want to know. I want to know you as a student and who you are, right? So that I can help meet your needs and be the best instructor for you as I possibly can. Because I want my students to be successful and learn from this class. And so building a safe environment is so important to really make a class where the rest of the semester, students want to learn with each other. They want to talk with each other. They want to communicate with each other. And they're very open with me. And the conversations that we can have around the content that we're talking about is so much more in depth because students feel safe to share, to be themselves. And so these are just a few things, you know, throughout this presentation, I feel like it's so strong to really hear from students, you know, the voices of students themselves. And so this top one is a student's comment. And what I do is at the end of every class or module, you know, we're all using different platforms to teach. At UT, we use Canvas. And so every class, whether I'm teaching in person or online, because right now I'm teaching an online class about disabilities. And that's actually where all of these student comments are from, are my current online course. But even when I teach in person, every class is connected to a module. And at the end of every module, I ask students to provide a SMIT, and it's the single most important thing that they learn from class. And I actually stole this from another professor at UT. So I'm going to give credit to Jim Patton. This was his idea, but I love it so much. And it's a great way for me then, at the end of every class, to go in and reflect and really look at and see what did students get from class that day. And I love reading their SMITs. And so this is a SMIT from the first class together, the one where we talk about all these things that we're really talking about today, right? Because I do go through this and talk about this with my students. And it's part of doing this, and they're referring to the idea of like valuing students in a classroom and really setting up that, you know, safe classroom environment, is providing a safe environment for everyone where they feel comfortable voicing their needs and concerns, right? And I just love hearing that, yes, that is what I want from my students. And so they picked up on that, how important that is and how much I value that as an instructor. This next quote is one that I just think is so great. It's from a reading that I actually have my students do on the very first day of class. It's called Power and Epiphany. And this is Cleaver in 1968. And it's a piece about notable individuals in US history and how they had this change of mindset towards people with disabilities because of different interactions that they had. And it's the price of hating another human being is loving oneself. And I think that really is going to resonate through the rest of my presentation, how much that one line stands true, right? That we need to love ourselves to love others and to accept others, which is going to lead me into my next part, identity empowerment, and why it's so important that we really build up students' identities. And then this is just a quote that I leave students with at the very end of my disability course that one really pointed out and noted how much they value this line that I gave them. That's every identity has a purpose and a power. And I do not mean superpowers. I actually don't like when we over exaggerate, especially people with disabilities, as being like superhuman or superpowers. We're human. We're like every other person. We just have disabilities. But within that, we do have strengths. You know, I'll talk about my own personal identity of being a person with disabilities and the strength and what I get out of having my disabilities. All right, so that is going to lead us to identity empowerment. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. And I absolutely love going over this with students and doing some fun activities with them and really helping them accept themselves and be comfortable with who they are, especially their identity as a student in that classroom, right? And so these are just some of the key points when I do this presentation with my students that I talk about with them. I go into more in depth than I'm going to go into here because of time. And I also go a lot more in depth with them about me, my identity, my intersectionalities, and how that's all factored into who I am and the type of instructor that I am. And so it's really, I think, a powerful way to start a class to really help engage students too, and just the content, the topics, each other. So the first point that I always make sure we go over is disability identity language and how we prefer to be referred to. But there's two camps. There is, and you've probably all heard this, person first language, which is where we really want to emphasize the person before the disability, right? And these are individuals who really see disability is just a part of them, but it doesn't encompass all of them. It's not their full identity, but yes, they have these disabilities. This is personally what I prefer in regards to the types of disabilities that I have. And this, again, this is my preference. I go by a person with disability, right? I have dyslexia. Whereas other individuals, they really see their disability as the forefront of who they are. It really does establish their identity. And that is a person who wants their disability to be stated before them. And so the difference, you could look at it as like somebody who prefers to be a person with autism versus an autistic person. Both are right. Both are correct. Because those individuals, each person with a disability gets to choose their language and how they see their disability and how they put it into the context of who they are as an individual in their life. And so what I teach my students is both are right, right? Neither one is wrong. It's up to the individual for them to decide. And then for us to be respectful of what they decide. So I always make note when students, especially when students are opening up about their disabilities and they're talking about those on the first day of class, and they're talking about, well, I actually am a person with autism, or I'm an autistic person, or, you know, ADHD, learning disability. And I will make note of how they refer to themselves to be respectful to that, because that's who they are, and they get that choice over how they see their disability and the language that they prefer to use around themselves and their disability. The other thing I do go over with my students is pronouns. This is another big part of identity and who individuals are. And so oftentimes we have to have a conversation around identity and what traditional pronouns are versus other types of pronouns that individuals use and prefer to use. Once I know a student's pronouns, that is what I will use. If they go by they, them, I will always then refer in the terms of they, them when I am talking with them or about them. And so pronouns are also just a great way to show students that this is a safe classroom environment, that I am respectful of how they identify, right, and who they are. And students are so grateful for this. I remember the very first time I did this, right? I was young too, just starting off, and had just sat through a presentation myself on pronouns. And I asked all my students, and there was a student who wrote on their name tag, they, them. And after class, that student came up to me and was like, thank you. You know, they said it was the first time a professor had ever asked for their pronouns or cared. And they were just so appreciative that they then felt comfortable to be the person, to let me know and know that they were going to be respected. Because let's be real, I mean, there are still individuals, classrooms, instructors who are going to look down on that and think that everyone still needs to fit into these boxes. And we know that's not true. Y'all, there are a ton of boxes, but they are all different colors, shapes, sizes, and that is okay. And so it's a really easy way to really help establish a safe classroom. We also talk about disclosure, right? In creating a classroom environment where all students feel safe and valued, especially students with disabilities, right? For a long time, a lot of these students were trying to hide their disabilities. They did not want people to know, find out, because they felt that was safer. So to kind of change their mindset around their own disabilities, we do talk a lot about self-disclosure, and that's the idea that they get to choose what they're comfortable sharing. I will never force a student to share anything they're not comfortable with, not with me, not with their classmates, that it's still a personal choice over what aspects of your identity that you share, but never hide it in shame or because you're afraid of the way people are going to think. You are who you are. You are uniquely you, and that is perfect, right? But it's still your choice. And so we do have a conversation around that to make sure students feel comfortable, because I don't want to, you know, put on students more anxiety about, oh my God, I have to share this or that. This is a safe space. You share what you're comfortable with that helps us learn and get to know you, who's the person you want to present in this space? And that's perfect. And then, of course, the last thing, when we do this activity with my students, I do an identity wheel where they get to fill out these boxes that ask for things, and they do that privately. It is only for their eyes, this activity, but it really also talks about the intersectionality of our different pieces, our different aspects of our identity and what that means. You know, and some of our pieces to our identity are fluid. They change. Different periods of our life create different types of identity, to others that are very stable. We were either born with them, or once we got them, they're unchanging, right? And so we talk about how these intersect to really create what our identity is at our forefront. The ones that we really think about, the aspects of ourselves that are like always there, to the things that we're like, oh, that's a part of my identity. I didn't even think about that. I remember we did this activity once and students are writing it all down, and then they're, you know, talking with each other, and then of course we share as a class, and the students like, my partner put their age, and she was like, didn't even consider my age as a part of my identity. And this other student's like, oh no, I just turned 21, which in the United States, 21 means you're legally able to drink. So you can see why that was a big part of this student's identity at that point in their life. And so it's just really interesting to hear them talk about this and have these conversations around things that, you know, somebody might talk about their athletic status and somebody else is like, oh, I didn't even think about that. Or, you know, other things that are really upfront versus, and there's also things that change, right? When I was younger, being athletic was a big part of my identity. I'm talking a lot of years ago, y'all. Don't worry, I like sprayed to cover up my grays because I'm probably much older than you are thinking that I am right now. But when I was much younger, I was very poor. My family was poor, but we were housed to this kind of really wealthy high school. And so it was very prevalent to me. Like, I always was conscious of the fact I was kind of the poor kid at this school. I was also had disabilities, which I hid. I did not want anybody to know that I was a person with disabilities. So I really hid that, but I was athletic. And so I really put that at the front, played that up, and used that as my advantage. Whereas like now, I have 3 young kids, I'm not doing any sports. So that's not a strong part of my identity right now, right? So just that helps you see how identity can be fluid, or aspects, you know, are more at the forefront and then might go more to the back as we age and get older. We go into different stages of our life. So we talk about all this with our students, and it's an incredible conversation that we have, and it really helps empower them, and they start to find this value, this acceptance in who they are, even these aspects of themselves that they hadn't even really thought about. And then you can just see the way they're now looking at their classmates, and they're like, yeah, that's awesome. Your identity is much different than mine, but that's great, right? And you can see how they're starting to value and accept each other as they're building up their own identity. So the more we can build up students' identity and them to have this confidence in themselves, they're going to start looking and valuing other people who are different than them more. And so we're going to do a short version of this activity right now. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is think about your own identity. So in just a second, we will start. So make sure you listen to all the rules first, and then we will get started. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give you about 2 minutes. I'm going to set a timer because I get to awkwardly sit here for 2 minutes staring at the screen while I allow y'all to do this activity. So what I want you to do is, I know you all probably have a cell phone with you or some kind of tablet or something you're taking notes on. So find a notes place, a Word doc, something you could type in, or if you have pen and paper, you know, I'm more of a pen and paper person, so you can do pen and paper also, just somewhere where you can jot down some notes. And what I want you to do is when I say start, I want you to start writing down all the things of your identity that are just immediately coming to you, right? You have 2 minutes, so it still gives you some time to think, but what are the things that you think about when you think about who you are, your identities? Then we're going to take another 2 minutes, and I want you to share with those around you. So if you are in person, right, which is where I wish I could be right now with y'all, talk to people around you, especially people that you don't know. You know, but they may know, you may tell them things about your identity they had no idea. Again, disclosure, you only have to share what you are comfortable sharing. If you're on Zoom right now, I am hoping that they can send you into breakout rooms real quick for 2 minutes, and you'll be able to just discuss real quick with people around you. Again, I would take much more time if I was in a classroom setting, but I'm just doing a little taste for y'all of what this is like. And if you're on Zoom and they are not able to send y'all into breakout rooms, well, you get a little break. So that second 2 minutes, you can run and go to the restroom or grab yourself something to snack on or a drink or something like that. Alrighty, so I'm just gonna sit here quietly. I'm going to hit the timer for 2 minutes, and I want you to take that time to just start writing things about your identity. All right, and you can go. Now I see myself again. I hope that you can see me this whole time. Otherwise, I'm back with you. So understanding their needs is so important. You know, for me, in my philosophy of teaching, it is about meeting students' needs, whether they have formal accommodation letters or not. I always ask students at the beginning class, what do you need? What do you need to be successful? What can I do to help support you, right? And facilitate your learning. Every student has different needs, but we also know students with disabilities have specific things that they need to be successful. And those accommodations are so important to their overall success. And so we need to make sure that we know our students, know what those needs are. And it could be other things, y'all. We have so many types of students. Like I've got students who are performers, who are athletes, who are part of organizations that have things going on. And it's important to have all that context. So I understand when they might need some flexibility, right? When we might need to talk about a due date or something like that, right? Because again, my ultimate goal is for my students to learn. That is what I want from them, is to learn the information. And that's not something we can put a time limit on, right? It's more important to me that they do an assignment, not, oh, you missed the due date. Sorry, you know, don't worry about it because you're getting a 0. Another big thing that I found is so important is options, y'all. Assignment options are just options in the way students can complete things and do things. So a simple thing that I do is I always offer for pretty much all assignments, you know, give or take some, they have the option of a written, right? Because some students are great writers, but some are not. Some are dyslexic and writing is hard, or they have dysgraphia. And so I want to provide another way that they can show me what they know. And so I always offer up video option as well. So you can record and, you know, provide a video of you saying the information versus written, or you can meet with me, right? We can do one-on-ones. And if you need more of prompting and conversation, again, I'm not going to give them anything. They either know the information or they don't, but it's a way to help students be able to show me what they learned and what they know versus, oh, here's your one way you're going to do it. So just being very flexible and open with how students do work. You know, I love project-based works and creative learning styles. It also makes it fun because, come on, who doesn't learn more when they're having fun, when they enjoy what they're doing, they enjoy class and being there. Right, and another big piece is communication and how important it is in how we communicate, the language that we use, the tone that we're using, right, with students, you know, the frequency of communication. You know, I do give my students reminders. Before class starts, you know, I'll do like midweek motivations. Sometimes it's a video, sometimes it's just written, but I want to stay in communication with my students. You know, if I see the students falling behind, I will reach out. right? I will talk with them. A lot of those students are students with disabilities, specifically ones struggling, right, with maybe emotional behavior disorder or a mental health disorder. And so those are often students who really need more support and understanding, and that can make all the difference when we take that time to really communicate and let our students know that we see you, we value you, I understand that you're struggling. What can I do? What do we need to do to still help you learn and get through this class, right? And it really does have a great impact. So here, of course, like I said, students say it best. So here's a couple more quotes from students about, this is again from another SMIT. This might have been a SMIT 2, I think, when we went more into like differentiation and how, a lot of my courses are for teachers. And so I do talk about how they can be inclusive teachers and the importance of these things, but it's also important that I model it and I show it. And I'm that same way in class that I want them to be when they go out and be teachers. So therefore, there exists a duty for everyone to do whatever they can to make the world a more open, welcoming, and acceptable place for everyone, as every human has a right to live freely, happily, successfully, and as independently as possible. Yes. The differentiated practices of teaching provide raw parameters for everyone in the school sector to consider. Recognizing opportunities to value every individual in the classroom while optimizing time spent is very important. Whether it be through opportunities to aid the environment curriculum or for students to feel more comfortable with trust, available agencies, all these intricacies matter deeply to the synergy of learning. I love my students' writing and what they say. People learn best through various methods. It is beneficial to foster a respectful relationship that makes a student feel safe to create the ideal learning environment. Yes, absolutely. If your students don't have a good environment to learn in, they will not be able to receive an effective education. I mean, that's the simplest way to just say, I feel like everything I've been saying is that it has to be a good environment. And that is our job, to create post-secondary environments that are good, safe environments that students can really learn it, especially our students with those differences. And here's one that I just love. Disabilities come in so many forms, from visible to invisible, permanent, chronic to temporary, and mental to physical. Each individual affected by these disabilities differently, and each disability occurs in the context of that individual's life. This leads to there oftentimes being various intersections that must be addressed in order to adequately support that person. Furthermore, because each of these individuals are inherently unique, their needs and preferences will vary. Therefore, it is incredibly important that we listen to them, describe their needs, and accommodate them appropriately. They said it perfectly. Right, so now I'm kind of moving to my last piece before I get a little bit personal on y'all. But this is really just, everything I've talked about is to create an inclusive classroom, right? A post-secondary environment that isn't this traditional stagnant classroom where students need to come in, sit down, I'm gonna lecture and just spew out information. They're gonna learn it, they're gonna walk out, and then they're tested on it. But it's creating more open environments, conversations, communication, really diving in deep into the topics and the content that we're teaching. And so, an inclusive post-secondary classroom, a space where all students are safe to be the learner they are and obtain the knowledge they need to be successful. So I'm going to tell y'all a quick story. I oftentimes will get students who are coming back to finish their degrees after many years of not being there, specifically athletes who, played a sport for UT many years ago, and then they're coming back to finish their degree. Maybe they left early to go play the pro sport. And this was an individual student who was coming back after 30 years. He'd been a UT athlete, went pro, and is now wanting to finish his degree 30 years later. And he's telling me the story from his perspective and how impactful it was. But essentially, he walked in and he was scared. It was his first day back in a university classroom after 30 years. And here's this room full of predominantly 18 to 22-year-olds, right? And then him. And he said he was so scared. He was so intimidated. He's like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be a learner, like be a student. So he goes and he finds a chair in this back corner. And he said that I was just walking around, like greeting students, talking to students. I mean, I have been told that I'm the Energizer Bunny, right? Just trying to make everybody feel comfortable and welcome. And then I go up to him and I'm like, "Who are you?" Introduce myself. And he looks at me and goes, "Ma'am, I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know how to be alone." And he said that. I looked at him and I just smiled. I said, "Yes, you do. You just need to be you. You are the learner that you are." And I was like, "I'm here to help you and make sure you're successful." And I didn't realize in that moment how powerful that was to him, but he went on to actually give a speech and talk about that story in his speech and talk about how impactful that was, and that he then internalized was like, wait a minute, she's just telling me to be me. Like, I can't do this. I can't be a student. And he said it changed the way he walked into every other class that semester, and he ended up graduating and getting his degree. And so that language, how we create the space, that's so important, that we empower students to be the learner that they need to be successful. Right? So I really love this quote, which is an adaptation from the Dr. Seuss quote, but it's one that I always read to my students. And I always tell them, it's a great way to internalize and a way to think about yourself and who you are. So today I am me. That is all I can be. There's no one alive who is meaner than me. And I do live by this and try to remind myself daily to just be me and be the best me that I can be. So, of course, I have a few more student quotes for y'all because I think it's always a great way. And these are ones that were actually from the last class. So module 15, the last day of class, and what they took. And this is where I asked them, like, what is your SMIT for the semester? So across the semester, what are the singly most important things that really stuck with you from our class? And these are what some students said. Throughout this class, I have learned to always get to know someone before you start drawing conclusions about them. Getting to know someone goes a long way in helping you understand one another, and also in learning how to best serve them. This is one of the most impactful and inspiring classes I've ever taken. I learned many things that are so important and changed the way I view my life. It has also helped me learn to be a better person and to love everyone for who they are and accept and learn to love the individual differences. Inclusive education is about acceptance and integration of all students with and without disabilities to reach their learning potential. It involves meeting all accommodations and needs for students without isolating students for their needs. Very important. Learning to promote advocacy and create an inclusive environment against judgment is very powerful. Everyone possesses a purpose in this life. And lastly, they, students with disabilities, also deserve the same space and opportunity to learn and grow in the way that is best for them. Right? So I feel like when we as instructors implement this and we create this, our students know not only are they better learners, they're going to go out and they're going to be better individuals. And all the ones that are going to be teachers are going to start creating more inclusive spaces in classrooms, environments themselves. So I'm going to lastly leave y'all with some personal things about me. I know I said I was going to talk about my own identity and being a person with disabilities and why this is so important to me. First of all, I never thought I would be here. I don't think anybody ever thought I would be here. If we look back on my, public school and my K through 12, everyone who knew me, I think they would be like falling over if they knew, like, wait a minute, Lisa has a PhD, she's a college professor, she's giving speeches at big conferences, because that wasn't the way people saw me. I was first diagnosed with dyslexia and ADHD in first grade, and that is when I went into special education. And that was the start of my journey of special education. And, really when that happened, I just was deflated. As I grew up, the way society looked at me, the messages being sent were that I wasn't good enough. I wasn't smart enough. Disabilities are something that, only weird people have, like, you're not as good as other people, like, you have a disability. Of course, I had a loving family. My family was incredible. And the only reason I'm here today is because of my supportive family and a lot of other great individuals along the way. But I'm trying to make this a short story, right? I was then later diagnosed as an adult with anxiety disorder and OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. But so I ended up, you know, graduating. I went through special education through all my schooling, you know, really had these negative messages. I hid it. I didn't want people to know I had disabilities. I really tried to hide the fact that I was in special education. You know, it was really embarrassing. I was very ashamed of it. And I definitely didn't have self-acceptance for who I was. I went to community college at Austin Community College here in Austin, Texas, which is great. Loved it, before transferring into UT, which, thank you, UT. You know, you gave me that boost of confidence I needed to really accelerate me to where I am now. I still can't believe UT accepted me. I don't know why. They saw something in me though, some potential. And it was after I graduated my bachelor's in education that my mom told me a story. And she said, you know, I just have to sit you down and tell you how proud I am. Your high school counselor, my guidance counselor, that's supposed to transition me out of, you know, public schooling. She was like, when we sat to meet, she told your dad that you were not smart enough for college, that you didn't have what it takes, that if they sent me to college, they would be doing me a disservice and I would hate them for it because I would not be successful. Boy, was she wrong, because here I am, right? So I'm glad I didn't hear those specific words, but I had family that knew better and knew that disabilities didn't mean I wasn't capable, or that I wasn't smart. I had exactly what it took. I just needed to believe in myself. I then went on to get my master's at UT in special education. And then I went on to get my PhD in special education at UT. You know, and through my dissertation, I was really looking at post-secondary students. I was fascinated with the post-secondary classroom, students with disability. That is where my passion and my work lies. And if I do research, it's going to be with students with disabilities and, you know, post-secondary settings. The things I heard through instructors were things like students with LD aren't as capable. Accommodations are an unfair advantage. So unfortunately, those mindsets, those ideas still exist among post-secondary instructors. And we really need to break that down. We need to help everyone understand that this is a space for people with disabilities and all kinds of disabilities, and that accommodations and other tools that we give students are just what they need to be successful, right? So I hope you enjoyed this. I was trying to rush through the end as I was noticing the time, but thank you so much. It was my pleasure to present to y'all, and I will be coming back on live to answer any questions that y'all have. But again, thank you all so much for your time and listening.
Thank you, Lisa, give us such a wonderful presentation. I think Lisa is online now.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Any question on site or online? Lisa is going to taking question now. Lisa, 你可以把 Any question? 哦，那个谁可以递麦克风？可以。收音可以收到吗？哦，这样会有两个画面，还是你到？是吗？
到哪里问
？OK，
应该是这里问吗 ？Hello, Dr. Sigafoos. I'm Dr. Owen Low from the University of British Columbia. So my question for you, I really loved your notion. You mentioned that every identity has a purpose and power, right? So, but my question is, coming from individual to transform into identity, that's a long process, right? Especially identity has a purpose and power. So how would you recommend a student to go through the process to become like we are born as an individual, to eventually become an identity?
I think this space that we're creating is just to really help students within that classroom. I think what you're trying to get at is, yeah, like building a full self-identity is a much bigger thing than what we can do in like one individual class. But I've stayed in contact with a lot of students who have really taken the messages from the course and from helping them just understand what identity is. Because for some, it's the first conversation around identity that they've ever had. And helping them just realize it is a process over time. I mean, for me, it took taking courses as a PhD student on disability to really truly find self-acceptance in my own. And that was in my late 20s, right? So I'm just trying to get them to start thinking about it and understanding what a big piece it is, and to really just take that and just continue to grow with it as they do go through college. I think why I love college students so much is they're at a time where they're really formulating like who they are and where they fit into society. And I think we as college instructors have such a greater impact on that than just the course content that we teach.
Thank you, Lisa. Any question on site or online? Can we see online? Lisa, there is a question from online.
Yeah.
Yes.
Somebody asked, does your university have guidelines for university teachers for creating inclusive classrooms? Yes, we are a very progressive university. I've actually been certified in post-secondary inclusion classroom, and luckily we have a faculty innovation center that actually promotes a lot of this, and I've done a lot of work with them around really building inclusive classrooms. So our university really does strive to help build inclusive classrooms.
Any other question in this section? No? If there is no question right now, I think we thank Lisa again with a big applause. And thank you everybody.
Thank y'all so much for having me.
To participate in this section.